Falter over Cordia, you're welcome indeed to another edition of the programme. We are coming to you from the beautiful Erris Coast Hotel in Gisela for the launch of a new book by local councillor Gerry Coyle about his late father, entitled Henry Coyle, a Forgotten Freedom Fighter. Tommy, great to have you here in Gisela.
Thank you very much, Henry. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and you have a very special gig here tonight in the Erris Coast Hotel.
Yeah, we're launching what I would describe as an epic book about the history of not just Henry Coyle, but also all of the other freedom fighters who were more or less forgotten about in the aftermath of the Irish story of independence. And Henry Coyle was a phenomenal character. He was passionate, he was brave, he was courageous, he was all of the things that you would probably associate or that were synonymous with people like Michael Collins. But, you know, they say timing is everything, and maybe he was either born too early or too late, but I think he was a man who could have had as much significance in Irish history as Michael Collins. His whole story is really a moving feast. We talk about the fact that he, at 12 years of age, he went to Scotland picking potatoes. He joined the freedom fighters. He became synonymous with the issues around the 1922 scenario. And apart from all of that, he spent time in prison on a number of occasions. His marriage made the New York Times. And his story in general is quite extraordinary insofar as this was a man from New York, Gisela in County Mayo, who demonstrated what freedom fighters were all about, the passion that so many men and indeed women at that time possessed in trying to get the freedom of our state. And it's beautifully put together by Gerry Coyle in this book. It's full of nostalgic photographs. It's full of all sorts of stories like, for example, carrying gelignite in a Wellington, being caught by the police, being told that if he didn't name up who was involved with him by dawn he would be shot, and his answer was, why wait till dawn? Shoot me now. So that was the kind of bravery that we associate with all of these freedom fighters. But this book, Henry Coyle, A Forgotten Freedom Fighter, is an absolutely amazing read.
Now, as I said, you're MC for the event here this evening for the launch of the book. So what can we expect here?
Well, we can expect lots of. Obviously, Gerry Coyle will be telling us the inside story. We have Michael Ring, who actually has a very strong connection with the Coyles, which will be revealed later on. Former Taoiseach Enda Kenny will officially launch the book, and James Laffey, editor of The Western People, who was very involved in the book, will also be speaking to us. And obviously, local politicians will be here in their droves, so we might get a word with some of them as well.
Yeah. Among the huge gathering were a number of local politicians from all sides of the political spectrum.
And it's good to be here this evening for this. And I wish Gerry the best of luck with this book. I was saying to him he could have done a PhD, so he could be a doctorate after this. But it's a fine piece of work. And for us locally here, it's very important to understand the human stories and the local stories attached as well. I mean, I'm continuously finding out things of what happened in history that's relevant, not to our own but to our own family and going back to our ancestors, but to the community here and different things that have happened. You know, it can explain a lot of things for us for the future, but I think it's about understanding our past, but not being bound by it, but learning from it and learning from those experiences, and it drives us forward. So it's important. I think it'll also be very important for our diaspora and people who aren't living in the community now but would have a curiosity around history as well, and what makes us what we are. It all makes us what we are, doesn't it?
Michael, welcome to Gisela. Of course, this could be very personal for you.
Well, Henry, first of all, I'm delighted to be here. That's my first time in Gisela, a place I love. I've been coming here for 30 years now doing clinics. But it's a funny thing, Gerry Coyle and I are just like that. We're the best of friends. Little did I know that my granduncle and Gerry Coyle's father had connections back in the 20s. They both fought for freedom for Ireland. My granduncle took the Free State side, and Gerry Coyle's father and my granduncle were in jail in Castlebar together. When Michael Collins came down to Castlebar, the two people he wanted to see were Joe Ring and Henry Coyle. And little to think that, 100 years later, that Gerry Coyle and myself We've been great friends and have been great friends. I died for Gerry Coyle and I know he would die for me. And I'm so happy today to see so many people turning out. This is an amazing story. In fact, Henry, I met you the other night and we were at a film. This would make a tremendous film. I mean, this is unbelievable. When people read this book, they'll get a flavour of what I mean. And all I can say, I'm glad to be here. There's a great contact, a contact that goes back a long time, and a contact that we have presently today and will always have, because I'll always and ever be a friend of Gerry Coyle, and he'll be a very friend of mine. But it's amazing that Joe Ring and Gerry Coyle's father, Henry Coyle, both of them were in jail together. They fought, and my granduncle died for this country, and Gerry Coyle's father played a major contribution in having the Free State in this country.
Well, that only came to light, that connection, during the research for the book. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, I had read about my granduncle. I had heard about him being in Castlebar. I heard about Collins coming down. I didn't never realise who else was in jail with them. I didn't realise that there was a connection there between himself and Henry Coyle. And to be fair, and somebody I would have been used to history because it was in our family. But the thing that happened was Gerry started doing the research. Gerry that discovered it. And not only did he discover that, you'll see what else he discovered in the book. The amount of stuff that he had discovered about his father. And I mean, it's unbelievable that his father, played such a major part in providing arms, and the contact he had with Collins, and the contact my granduncle had with Collins. Sometimes we forget our history, Henry, and I suppose in school, for years and years, we never taught the history. So we didn't, How are you?
Let's get one more question.
Good to see you. How are you keeping? How are you? Good to see you, right? How are you? Good to see you. Sorry about that, Henry. Sorry about that.
Last question. Looking forward to reading the book.
I am. I have to be honest, yeah. I got it here at most, and I have a nice bit of it read, and I'm enjoying it thoroughly. And I'm telling you, people that will buy this book, they will enjoy it. I have to say this, Henry. History is wonderful, and it's wonderful for Gerry Coyle. I think it's great that he is a forgotten hero, as is Joe Ring. We forgot the contribution that they made.
I want to wish Gerry Coyle well as he launches his book this evening, dedicated to his late dad and about his late dad, but about so many others too. That generation, many of whom are forgotten, who fought for our freedoms, the freedoms we often take for granted today. I'm so sorry I can't be with you. I'm abroad on government business, but I'm with you in spirit, and I look forward to reading the book in detail. And I commend Gerry and his family for the work in putting this book together, for their persistence, and for ensuring that the story of Henry Coyle will never be forgotten.
Only a few minutes ago before the launch, we managed to catch up with the author himself, Gerry Coyle. This has been a long time coming for you. You put so much work into it, and to see it finally being released, published this evening.
Yeah, it was a major undertaking, but I hope I have done justice to who it's about. That's my wish. It's nothing to do with me. It's telling a story of forgotten Ireland, a forgotten history. And the one message I want to bring from this book to everybody out there: you can have bad chapters in your life, you can have bad things happen in your life, but you can turn the tide around and you can be a great person afterwards. And that's what my father and mother were. And I live right beside the tide, and it doesn't matter how far out the tide goes, it always comes back in. So I'm asking that people would remember Henry Coyle. At his lowest ebb, he said he extended the hand of friendship to those around him. He made some wonderful comments. He said there was only 2 letters that separated the word justice from injustice. And he felt there was injustices done to him here, but he turned the tide around. He met my wonderful mother, Molly Ginty from Durreel and Ballycry, and what an inspirational woman that was. She was an inspiration to us. She turned his life around. He told a court one time it was his 54th time in the dock, but he was never in the dock after he met Molly Ginty Coyle.
It's 20 years in the making. Can I just ask you, how are you feeling this evening now?
I'll be feeling relieved, to tell you the truth, Henry, because I thought this day would never come. And what an honour it is to have this man here beside me to launch this book. These people fought for Irish independence back in the 20s. This man got his economic independence in 2013 when the Troika was moved out of Ireland. And I think that's a special testament to have a man like this launch this book. And just I want to emphasise again, people make mistakes in their lives, they do things wrong in their life, but don't give up. Don't give up. The worst day you ever had is only 24 hours. So the tide will turn and the tide will come back in, and it's great to be here. It's great to be part of these great people and people like yourself, Henry, that's doing pieces for Irish history and all that. And that man holding that camera there has the biggest history story in the world to tell. Europe was at peace until the new war started because of the D-Day Normandy landing that his grandmother sent from Black Sod. So, like Eris punches above its weight in boxing, but we also punch above our weight. And that flag you see in there, it's a very significant flag. Henry Coyle, Senior, my father, fought for that flag. And that particular one in there was raised in Pretoria, South Africa, when Henry became the world military champion. And I think that lays testament. My father fought with guns and Henry fought with gloves, but both of them fought for Ireland.
Can I just ask you a final question there? Do you think your father now will finally get the recognition he deserves in Irish history?
I hope that the word, the IN in front of the justice will disappear, and now he will at least get justice. There's an awful lot more to the life of Henry Coyle than what happened in the Dáil or what happened with the Czechs and everything else. And that will, please God, get some more scrutiny from better scholars than I am. We are here today to remember a great man, a proud Irishman, a proud Mayo man, a proud Irishman.
Fáilte Rash, you're very welcome back to part 2 of the programme. Well, it's time for the official launch with your MC, Tommy Marin from Midwest Radio.
The man whose dream is being realised tonight here in Geesala, in his own home turf. What better place to launch a book about his father, about his mother, about the whole social history of the Coyle family and the greater political story. Ladies and gentlemen, Councillor Gerry Coyle. Here he is with his sporting his Mayo tie. What about that? So, Gerry, I want you to take that microphone. I might have to take it off you if you talk too much, but have a seat. James and Michael, and you're all really, really welcome. Before we get into talking about what we're here to talk about, just explain to the people here tonight the significance of this tricolour behind us.
This tricolour here, my father fought for it, and my son fought under it, because that's the flag that was raised in Pretoria in South Africa when Henry became the world military champion. My son Henry,
yes,
the same name as his father. The only difference, he fought with gloves, his grandfather fought with guns.
James Laffey, I want to bring in James because James had a huge input into this whole thing. And you know, I suppose because Gerry is so close to the whole thing, James, it needed somebody to steady the ship and put the whole thing into context, because we all know how organised Gerry Coyle can be.
Well, I have about 400 emails, I'd say, at this stage from Gerry. That was at the last count. But no, Gerry would have approached me about this 10 years ago, I'd say, maybe even more, when he was still doing a lot of the research. And I suppose it was 25 years of research, really, that Gerry had been doing. Like, a lot of the material that he would have given to me initially was microfilm. So you're talking about pre the internet. You know, it was material from libraries in Liverpool and Edinburgh, because his father was on trial in both Edinburgh and in Liverpool. And there was a lot of media coverage. So, you know, one of the things that Gerry was very keen on from the very beginning was that everything needed to be backed up with documentary evidence, whether it was a newspaper file, whether it was a pension archive, the whole thing. And when you see the sources in the back of the book, you know, you can see there was an awful kind of huge amount of sources from England, from Scotland and from Ireland.
From a young politician's perspective, listening to what we've been talking about tonight, Alan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, listen, it's enthralling to listen of our past, and you know, in respect to Henry Coyle and his bravery, and I think these stories does resonate with you know, a lot of our young generation, and especially in the decade of commemorations. You know, we've seen a huge amount of events that's happened, and it does give us a huge understanding of, you know, how Ireland became, you know, the powerhouse that it is, you know, on the crest of Europe. And certainly tonight is a great night in terms of, you know, bringing that spotlight to Gisela and putting a spotlight on that bravery, and also tales of betrayal that was bestowed on Henry Coyle. And, you know, no better man than Gerry to tell a good story, and tonight is all about that.
To launch the book officially, would you please welcome former Taoiseach Enda Kenny.
I actually believe myself that history and geography make an impact upon the kind of people that we are and who we are. I agree very much with what James Laffey has said, that in dealing with Henry Coyle, his life's story and the story of others, that he's put that in the broader context of what was happening. And I also agree with Seamus Caulfield, as I usually do, and that there are other stories to be told, many other stories to be told. And so from that perspective, it's difficult actually to try to put yourself in the mindset of the people who were about 100 years ago. It's not, as somebody said, there's a series in this. The Reardons were a big programme when we were all a little more innocent, black and white television in the 60s. This book tells the story of a man who was proud of his family and proud of his country. It's worth a read. I've read it 1.5 times. There are details in there that you will forget, but it's a story of energy, of commitment, and of belief. It's a story of a true son of Ireland, a forgotten freedom fighter, Henry Coyle, and I'm glad to launch it formally for you.
With the book now officially launched, we spoke to James Laffey, the editor of The Western People, and other guests.
James, there's a great connection between the Western People and Henry Coyle. You came across a very interesting article.
There was, Henry. In 1964, Henry Coyle wrote a letter to the Western detailing his involvement in the War of Independence. It was actually the only time that he spoke publicly about his involvement in the War of Independence, and he went through in some detail in this letter what he did in Scotland, the trials he stood in England and Scotland. And I suppose the interesting thing that I found was he was 70 years of age when he wrote that letter, and you'd think maybe somebody's memory was fading, but not a bit of it. When I checked all the details on that, everything corroborated with what he wrote in that letter. And the level of detail that he had in that letter, even down to he could remember where some of the people he was involved with, where they worked in Liverpool, things like that, you know. So there was that connection that goes right back to the 1960s, and I know my predecessor, Terry Riley, would have been very friendly with Henry Joe Coyle, the boxer who was mentioned here tonight, the record knockout in the National Stadium as well. So there's been a connection for a long time between the Coyles and the Western People. So that's why it was great to be involved in the book and to keep that connection.
Well, there's one that I heard some years ago from Gerry, and I congratulate him on the book. But there's only one, there are many stories, and hundreds of stories. But the only one I've told my grandchildren, and told them more than once at this stage, is about Henry Coyle and him walking through customs with I don't know how many rifles, a dozen rifles, in a golf bag on his shoulder, and walking past army, walking past police, walking through the lot of them, because he'd come up with a great plan of just cutting the heads off the golf clubs, sticking them down the barrels of the gun, and he walked straight through with all of those.
The connection with the Michael Collins Historical Society is we are a learning forum where we archive as much information as we can, share it with as many people as we can, giving reference to where we got it from. That particular photograph was found in an old British Pathé film, and it was still shotted based on who we were looking at the photograph as to who was carrying the coffin of Michael Collins, and it was there that we found the photograph of Henry Coyle. And Gerry Coyle rang me one day out of the blue, thanking us for the photograph. I didn't know at the time who he was, and subsequently met him at the 100th anniversary of Belmullet, and he was there like a miracle of loaves and fishes with this folder and this photograph, showing it to everybody, and didn't realise that it was me he was showing it to. and I jumped over the barrier to him, gave him a hug, and the rest is history.
We are just absolutely so proud to be able to be here for the book launch for Gerry, and on behalf of all of the nieces and nephews, how proud we are of Gerry for putting pen to paper and recognising his dad and my grandfather in this book.
What do you think this will mean for the Coyle family, this book?
I think it means a lot for everybody. Like, looking back and everything, like, these are people that were forgotten and they came from hard times, and to be able to recognise that for Gerry and everybody else just means the absolute world for us.
People say to me that I met this evening, there is an uncanny resemblance between you and that photograph of Henry Coyle. Unbelievable.
The mugshot. I was probably in a few mugshots before, but I don't have them. I had a tighter haircut at the time, but yeah, it has been said, and like the older people in the village here years ago used to say it, and I'd never think anything of it, and it's when you know, some of the pictures on the back of this and the picture on the front came about, and obviously the picture of him carrying Michael Collins' coffin. It's kind of, a lot of people have said it to me since, and yeah, we definitely think Henry Coyle is my grandfather.
There's no doubt in that. What's special for you in the book?
I suppose it's like what went on and the stuff that he'd done, like under the radar. And as Gerry said up there, like the O'Hara lady from Dulahus, he went to her probably 30 years ago and showed her some of the archives he had, and she was like, "There's no way your grandfather did that, like, or your father." And like she couldn't get her head around it, that it was the same person she knew going to mass in Gisela in his, you know, late 60s, early 70s. And then she started doing her research on you, and it was from that, basically, that stuff like that it wasn't really talked about when we were young. And when my father Gerry got into the council and that, the odd person had said to me, Gerry Murphy was a teacher in the Tech then, and he was a good old historian, and he used to be saying it. As Gail get Garroge, he'd be saying stuff to me, and I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, about it." And he'd be like, "Oh, your grandfather, this and that." So there was just people like that to be saying it, but we never really knew the story until I still haven't read the book. I'm not a great man reading, so it's just things like that I'm looking forward to seeing in the book and hearing about, you know, what went on back in the day.
You're one of our diaspora. You're based in Chicago, as I mentioned. This book would be very special for an awful lot of our Mayo immigrants that left many, many years ago, looking back at a turbulent time in our history.
Turbulent time, but you know, it wasn't really talked about like around here, and you know, the most thing now annoys me, like, because you have people going around roaring and shouting stuff, and if they see a gun, they'd run a mile. You know, everyone was out to fight for our country, but these people that got us where we are today. But you know, it's good we have peace in the country, and it is a great story to bring back to all our friends, as you know, in Chicago, the likes of Pat Gibbons and all that crew, to realise that went on here in North Mayo, and what happened to people here, and how, you know, they went away and they fought and they came back. And it's just like someone said to me in there, I won't say who it was, but they were like, it was like there was a pact with the people that fought, and they came home and said, "Let's just forget about it, we're all going to be living here together now and get on with life."
Well, we'd like to wish Gerry every success with the new book, which is available in all good bookshops nationwide and indeed online. We hope you enjoyed the programme. So until next week at the same time, slán before.